So, you want to buy or sell some property in Gainesville, Florida? Well, buckle up, Buttercup. The 2024 real estate market was about as predictable as the weather during hurricane season. One minute, it's sunshine and opportunity. The next minute, you're frantically tying down your patio furniture while interest rates blow through the roof. The 2024 housing market was what a lot of industry experts are calling the perfect storm. I happen to prefer the term real estate Hunger Games, and many consumers were volunteered as tribute without even knowing it. Several things layered one on top of the other in 2024 to make it a tougher year. For starters, existing home sales dropped to levels we haven't seen since 1995. Yes, that's right. The last time home sales were this low, TLC's Waterfalls was topping the charts, and we were willingly wearing chokers and using encyclopedias to do research papers. We went from selling 6.1 million homes in 2021 to just 4.06 million in 2024. That's not just a dip, that's a sizable drop. And the culprit? Well, it's complicated, but I want to break it down for you. I call it the real estate sandwich. So let's just pretend I'm working the deli counter at Publix and you're about to get a delicious real estate sub. First up, mortgage rates. They've been hovering at 7%, kind of like that awkward friend who doesn't quite know when it's time to leave the party. Oh, you thought I was leaving? No, I'm just gonna hang out here on your financial couch, making everything really uncomfortable. We all hoped the Federal Reserve was going to cut rates, and we hoped that that was gonna bleed over to mortgage rates to get buyers back out there and give the market a bit of a boost. But rates didn't really come down, and as my husband, who is a teacher, always likes to say, complicated problems don't necessarily have simple solutions. At the surface, lower interest rates would be great. It would make monthly mortgage payments a lot cheaper for buyers. And if mortgage rates are cheaper for buyers, they're gonna start buying homes, so sellers are gonna see their properties move. But with greater demand comes greater prices. So it's a tough nut to crack because we don't want prices to surge up because then we'd be right back in the mess of affordability all over again. For a hot minute, rates actually dipped in 2024 when everybody thought that federal rate cuts were coming. We were in the low sixes and we could just taste the fives. Buyers got excited and started browsing Zillow at 2 a.m. like it was Netflix. Then, by October and November, rates shot right back up to the sevens faster than humidity in August in Gainesville. Everyone gave a collective groan and went back to refreshing their bank accounts, crossing their fingers for a mysterious lottery win. Meanwhile, home prices in Gainesville corrected. They steadied. They didn't plummet, which makes an interesting layer to our sandwich because two things were happening at the same time. On the one hand, sellers were feeling extremely frustrated because their house wasn't selling for the same amount that their neighbor's house recently sold for, and even with doing price reductions, they still weren't seeing contracts or their property moving. At the same time, buyers were once again staring at this massive interest rate and looking at the monthly payment, realizing that they couldn't afford it. And even a $15,000 price drop, while it's helpful, may not overcome that monthly payment amount that 7% interest rates can bring. And we're gonna talk about the effect of those mortgage rates on our real estate sandwich even more. But first, here's a quick view of Alachua County's average sales price. When you look at 2024, you can see the volatility of the market because there are so many peaks and valleys. But what I always like to point out, and why real estate is such a phenomenal investment, is because even though we were having peaks and valleys, you can still see the overall trend of up and to the right. And if you look all the way back to 2019, what you'll see is that even though prices were volatile, they were up, they were down. We saw houses selling for less than their asking price. We saw price drops. We saw all kinds of seller credits. But what we did not see is house pricing go back below the pre-pandemic levels. And I think a lot of buyers were waiting and hoping that there was going to be a massive dip and they were going to get a much bigger deal than they thought. Generally, it's going to take something absolutely massive to make all housing prices plummet at the same time. Anybody remember 2008? While higher interest rates and election volatility caused a lot fewer homes to sell in 2024, Even though a lot fewer homes sold, we did not see a collective drop in pricing. So if you're waiting for those pre-pandemic prices, I don't know that we're gonna see that massive plummet without something horrific happening. The end of 2024 was particularly spicy because what we saw is that even with all of that volatility, prices still went up year over year. The average price of a home in Alachua County in December of 24 was $443,637. That's a 9% increase year over year from December of 2023. Now, let's add the next layer to our sandwich. It's called the lock-in effect. No, the lock-in effect is not when you lock your keys in the house, though the feeling of panic is somewhat similar. The lock-in effect is what's happening when current homeowners with a 2 to 3% interest rate look at current rates and say to themselves, I'd rather live in my closet-sized starter home forever than give up this interest rate. Can you blame them? If your mortgage rate was 2.5% right now, you'd probably treat it better than your firstborn. You'd write it love letters. You'd send it a card on your anniversary. You would defend it to strangers at parties. Oh, you think you've got a good mortgage rate? Well, my rate starts with a 2. The lock-in effect has created a bottleneck in that many homeowners who were in their starter homes and under more normal circumstances might have sold that home and bought their next home have stalled because they don't necessarily want to jump up to that higher mortgage payment and they want to stay where they are. Even if their current property is not perfectly meeting their needs, they know that they could afford it. Now, in any market, it doesn't matter if rates hit 20%, there's going to be people who have to sell. Death, divorce, babies, whatever it is. But there's a lot less people because if you don't have to sell, right now you may be sitting pretty on your mortgage payment and not wanting to give that up. But as we layer that real estate sandwich, we have to realize that multiple things can be true at the same time. Yes, no matter what the prices or interest rates, there will always be people who, due to life circumstance, have to sell their home. So while homes still are coming on the market, because there's not as much buyer demand, mainly due to high interest rates and affordability, those houses are taking longer to sell. The following layer of our sandwich is new construction. New construction has certainly filled some gaps, but it comes with its own set of challenges. First of all, builders in Gainesville have to be able to find buildable land that's not already on a protected wetland, or perhaps has already been claimed by gators with squatters' rights. But with new construction comes the fact that a builder, when they build homes, is better off selling that home at a discount rather than letting it sit. So when it comes to pricing, new construction plays a very big part in that. And we're already seeing new construction builders offering things like closing costs, reduced prices, cheaper mortgages. So if you're the next door neighbor who's trying to sell your home and you're up against brand new fancy construction, they're gonna be a major guideline in how the pricing is going to look in your area. A lot of these trends are national. Gainesville is dealing with them just like many other areas in the country, and then we have our own local quirks that we're dealing with. As a college town, we attract a ton of people who are wanting more arts, culture, education. But affordability kind of feels like that's becoming as rare as a good parking spot on a Gator football game day. It's first-time buyers, I think, that are feeling the pinch the most. In fact, the median age for first-time buyers has jumped significantly over the last several years. It almost seems like when you get your first mortgage, you're probably going to get your AARP card too. And get this, there has been a rise in overall cash transactions. And it's no surprise, with mortgage rates where they are, if you have the cash, it makes sense to use that cash in lieu of paying a much higher interest rate. When interest rates were at 2%, you were better off keeping your cash in reserve. So as we look into 2025, what does the market look like? What is Gainesville going to bring us? Well, I've consulted my crystal ball, which looks suspiciously like economic predictions with a sprinkle of educated guessing. Analysts are predicting a moderate increase of about 9% of existing home sales. That's not exactly a boom, but after the slump that was 2024, a 9% increase in homes sold kind of feels like getting a bonus nugget in your 10-pack at McDonald's. It's a small win, but I'll still certainly take it. Mortgage rates are predicted to stay above 6%, but hopefully come towards the lower end of that range. Again, Not ideal, but still better than watching those interest rates climb higher than the caffeine levels of a UF student during finals week. Home prices? They'll likely keep climbing, but at a more reasonable rate, probably somewhere around 4%. You can think of it as the difference between taking the stairs or taking the elevator. You're still going up, just maybe not quite as fast. We've also been seeing a lot of shifts in buyer demographics and preferences. The allure of city centers and closer urban living is making a comeback as the post-pandemic suburban exodus balances out. In Gainesville terms, that means downtown area, spots that are close to campus are probably going to see a bit of an uptick, while the more rural areas may cool slightly. Again, I don't think 2025 is going to be a year of extremes. I think we're going to plod along steadily and get through it. And an interesting trend that's also happening here in Gainesville is multi-generational living. I personally have seen an uptick in consumers who are wanting that multi-generational style for the house that they're buying. As I mentioned before, new construction is going to be very pivotal in 2025. More and more builders with inventory that's sitting are getting creative. They're offering better financing options, closing costs, price reductions. And as I said, that is going to influence the surrounding market. If you're selling a property and you're competing with nearby new construction, you have to find a way to compete. Your house isn't brand new. Perhaps it's better built. Perhaps it has a larger lot or different features. But when people are looking at that monthly payment, you're gonna have to do something to convince them that your home is the better home. Or you're gonna have to beat builders at their own game and offer better pricing or incentives for buyers. And what this competition will do is inherently, it will keep prices from skyrocketing. And inventory plays a huge role in pricing. Think about the pandemic. When there were not enough houses and there were more buyers, prices went crazy. For every one house, you had 10, 20, 30 buyers. So that was a commodity that people were willing to pay extra for because they didn't have any other choices. But in Alachua County, what was most recently reported by Florida realtors is we're now at about 3.3 months of inventory. To give that some perspective, during the pandemic, sometimes we only had 7 days of inventory. So now that script is starting to flip. Now when a buyer comes into a neighborhood, they might have 2 or 3 choices to look at, whereas before there may have been none. In terms of markets, a seller's market is when we have anything less than 4 months of inventory. So while we still are technically in a seller's market, we are heading towards a balanced market. Once we get above 6 months of inventory, that's when we see a buyer's market, meaning that for every one buyer, there might be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 houses. So just know that if you're a seller, you have to keep that in mind. There are not as many buyers, and you are now competing with other sellers in your area. So what does all of this mean if you're in Gainesville and you're trying to navigate the real estate space? I want to break it down into a few simple tips that does not require an economics degree to understand. If you're living in a home, you've got a great mortgage rate and maybe don't have the financial wherewithal to jump up to that next level, you can always consider renovation options to your property. In this type of market, sometimes it could be better just to improve what you currently have. Plus, sometimes it's kind of fun to throw on your HGTV hat and bore people at parties with your backsplash selections. Second, research financial options like it's your job. It's been slower, so a lot of lenders are probably going to start offering incentives. Mortgage rate buydowns, maybe different types of loans they hadn't offered before with less of a down payment. You can also look into ARMs, which are adjustable rate mortgages, but let me caution you. Adjustable rate mortgages can be a phenomenal tool, but I am going to urge you, beg you, plead for you to not only read the fine print, but to really consider what you're signing up for. Just ask anybody who got in trouble during the Great Recession with their adjustable rate mortgage. If the worst were to happen, if rates were to shoot up, would you be in financial trouble? Because if you would, maybe you should look into some other options. But everybody's case is different, so just know that it's an option, but pay attention to the details. Because this isn't like updating your iPhone. This is your financial future. So you've got to make sure you look well into the future to make sure you're going to be okay. Third, leverage local market knowledge. Gainesville has micro markets within micro markets. Some neighborhoods hold value no matter what's happening in the market. Others tend to fluctuate on the drop of a hat. Know your Gainesville zoning laws, property tax situations, and neighborhood trends. Is that area getting a new Publix nearby? Property values might surge. New craft brewery coming to the area? Watch those millennial buyers flock to that area with their remote jobs and sourdough starters. And finally, make sure that you're embracing incremental changes. With price appreciation moderating, timing plays a huge role. Keep an eye on community developments and infrastructure projects. The new road extension, expanded bus route, or high fiber underground internet could make the difference between a good investment and a great investment. The 2024 market challenged all of us, but 2025 is going to offer some strategic opportunities to those who are willing to adapt to today's market. Whether you're buying or selling or both in Gainesville, staying informed is going to be your superpower. That and maybe having a therapist on speed dial for when you start to have nightmares about your home not selling or getting into a bidding war. Every single market has its cycles. This isn't the first housing roller coaster, and it won't be the last. Our parents survived disco and 18% rates in the 80s. We got this. Gainesville remains a fantastic place to live. With its nature, culture, education, and enough farmers markets and craft breweries to give you actual decision fatigue. The housing market may be a challenge, but I believe this location is worth it. So keep putting away for your down payment, make sure your credit stays nice and polished, and keep your expectations, well, realistic. The right house at the right time is out there. It just may take a little more patience to find it. The key is to keep your dreams of homeownership alive. The market might be tough, but so are you. And with the right agent in your corner, you can get where you need to go. And if Gainesville is a place you're looking at and you like the idea of that more urban city center living, downtown is a phenomenal option. And you don't even have to fly here to come see it. I've got a tour to show you what it's all about. I'm Lindsey Johnson, your resource for all things real estate. See you next time.